Today's topic, a costly conversation. Welcome to another episode of TABLEscraps, in which we present a topic related to tabletop gaming and then have a brief conversation about it with the live audience. Let's not waste any more time listening to this weird intro music. Let's get right into today's discussion. Hey there, and welcome back to another episode in our month-long, daily, experimental web series, TABLEscraps, where we will be discussing a topic about tabletop gaming, along with the live streaming YouTube chat audience. So if this is your first episode, welcome and thank you for joining us. And let's get right to today's topic, which comes to us from a viewer, as always. And that viewer today is Trevin Taylor, who says, yes, meeples are preferable to cubes, but is it worth the costs? Price point keeps many people out of the hobby games, especially if they're coming from the $20 or less mass market. Money cards versus paper money, cubes versus custom, metal versus plastic versus wood, pre-painted versus assembly required. Which bling is nice enough that it should be included with the game even if it increases the price? What pieces should only be aftermarket add-ons, as the inclusion would make things cost prohibitive? Carcassonne has decided meeples are required for the theme to come through, but Pandemic is fine with viruses just being cubes. Did either of those people make a mistake? Where is the line between quality and cost? Woo! Well, that is a very, very thorough question. And Trevin, I think you are going to be extremely disappointed that I don't know what the best answer is. I do know a couple of things, which I'll spout off in the usual way, and then we'll go over to the YouTube chat and we'll see what others are saying. Personally, I have mixed feelings on this because I have a bit of a background in working with different merchants and online resellers who have sold a variety of different things, from vitamins online to clothing to all sorts of different products, goods, and services. And one thing that I have been always very whatever the word is when you're surprised, that would be the word. And one thing that I'm always surprised about is which products sell best. One of the highest grossing online stores that I've ever worked with, actually making 7 figures a month, was selling instructional videos on how to do magic tricks. Before I got involved with working with them, they were already making 7 figures a month. And their website was atrocious. And I'm not saying that just because it was before, I got in and made their website perfect. But no, literally, you had to scan the page for 20 to 30 seconds just to find the buy now button on their website. It was just hidden. It didn't even look like a button. And they were still selling their products hand over fist. So why? What did that teach me? What lesson is there to learn, and how does that apply to board games? What I learned from that experience is that if customers want your product, they will crawl over broken glass to get it. And so, ergo, in that regard, to me, I believe that when it comes to a luxury item, such as, magic trick tutorial videos or board games, price is actually not as large a factor in the purchase decision as other things related to the game or the product would be. If people get into the mode where they want this thing, they will crawl over broken glass to get that thing. And actually, that very thing is why I stopped talking about price in the videos that I do. But the reason I stopped talking about price in all of these videos that I do for the board games and the components is because I realized that it's completely subjective. What is expensive and an unnecessary buy to one person may be a necessity for the gaming experience that someone else has their heart set on. And one person may see it as overpriced, and one person may see it as completely normal. When you're reviewing games and talking about, the quality of the game and the production of the game, and is the game fun, and is the game easy to learn, and does the game have longevity, all of that stuff is legitimate. If there was one thing, at least to my point of view when creating board game media, that seemed like it was irrelevant to the discussion, it actually is the price. So I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle, but fortunately, we have many different angles at our disposal in the form of the YouTube chat. So let's go over there right now, and let's see what perspective the other people that are joining us today have on this subject. Today's first comment is going to come from Gazensha, who says, a lot of these so-called luxury pieces, separately shaped player components and resource tokens, make the game more accessible, particularly to colorblind folk. That is a really, really good point, kind of related to the colorblind topic that we talked to a few episodes ago. But yes, that is true. If all the meeples are the same shape and different colors, sometimes those colors can be difficult to discern. And so that is an area where the unique shapes for each component or each player can actually really be a benefit to the players. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that is a very valid point, Kazensha. Zachary mentions, I think that as custom components become more common, the means in which they are produced will become more cost efficient. Let's always be moving forward. MeepleSource is a website that creates a lot of custom meeples. And I know that they have, their own production process for cutting and painting and decorating the meeples. I'm curious about that. I should reach out to MeepleSource, or any one of us should reach out to MeepleSource and ask them if, as they've produced more and more meeples as time has gone by, if their production process has become more streamlined, or if they've been able to produce things more in bulk, and if that has affected their costs. That's actually a really good point and question there, Zachary. So I'll see if I can find out about that to see if there's any basis to that, and if MeepleSource or any other producer of custom components has any feedback on how production affects the price. Kabuki Kid, who says, I'm the wrong one to ask about this. I may have spent up to $300 tricking out my copy of Robinson Crusoe. If I like a game, I tend not to hold back. Granted, I only recently got the War of the Ring Anniversary Edition, and that was close to $400. Call me insane. I'm not going to call you insane, Kabuki, because I've seen other people spend more on other things that are related to board gaming or not. So honestly, my mantra. If you have the bills paid and you have your monthly board gaming budget, and it is your expendable income, expendable income is there to be spent on the luxuries that we have, if as long as we're not overspending. Given my experience with you, Kabuki Kid, I'm not going to call you insane. I'm keeping you on the maybe insane pile, which, all things considered, is still pretty big compliment there. Trevin mentions, would HeroScape have sold better or worse if it had not been pre-painted? Ho ho ho! Excellent question. HeroScape, for those of you not in the know, was an excellent game from the mid-2000s or so that came with plastic terrain and lots and lots of pre-painted miniatures. And it was actually a really, really excellent way to get some nice pre-painted miniatures into your collection. I can only speak from my own experience, and I can tell you that while I was big into HeroScape, and I still enjoy it to this day, one of the selling points to me was the fact that the minis were pre-painted. And if the miniatures for HeroScape were not pre-painted, I definitely would not have gone and purchased them and all the expansions and stuff as frequently. I know that I wouldn't have. That was a selling point to me. So there we have another example where even at a higher price point, if it is something that the consumer is specifically looking for, they will track it down and they will justify to themselves its purchase. Stefan says, I like a base simple game with the minimum. It lets more people get in on the game. Then the eccentrics can pretty it up all that they want. I think that's a good approach. I am not opposed to a basic base game with upgrade packs available. I think that's totally cool. Even Kickstarters could do that. The Kickstarters, instead of just blinging out the game with all these stretch goals, every now and then you'll have a Kickstarter that keeps a base game as, a pledge level, and then you can have like stretch goals or other add-ons that they do on Kickstarter sometimes. You can get all of the upgrades. And I always appreciate it when they do that. Would it be more difficult, though, for a publisher to take that approach? Because the publisher would essentially have to, instead of managing one SKU, the game, they'd have to manage multiple SKUs. Base game, upgraded game, and then all of the individual products that could be used to upgrade it. And if not a lot of people purchase those upgrades, well, then they have all the production and warehousing issues and stuff, and they're wasting money on that. So I can see why they don't do it, but I personally, like you, Stefan, am not opposed to having those options. So we'll see if it becomes a trend. I doubt it will because of the reasons we mentioned, but it would be cool to see if anyone else experiments with it. Gazencha says, I agree that what is worth the cost is subjective, but at the same time, there is a bang for your buck factor, which is less so. True, when you have the options between multiple games, and I just said that I wouldn't be opposed to the smaller and small scale version of the game, a basic game with add-ons, but if I was given the choice between the two, if I really liked the game, I would probably 50-50 lean towards that upgraded version of it with all of the bling, because you feel like you're getting more bang for your buck. I mean, hey, to be honest, that's the reason why I backed the recent Rising Sun Kickstarter, because I knew that Cool Mini or Not was going to really add a lot of content there and give the Kickstarter the most bang for the buck. And with the similarities between Blood Rage and Rising Sun, your mileage may vary on how similar they are, but I never got into or purchased Blood Rage, so I thought that this was a great jumping on point, not only to have a game kind of in that same vein, but also because I knew I was going to get a lot of bang for my buck. So that definitely can be, the bang for your buck factor definitely can be a deciding factor on when people buy a game, which can lead to this almost arms race in improving the components and quality and stuff that you get in the box. But really, I don't know everything, and time will tell, and we'll all find out together. But it's something to keep an eye on, I think. Michael mentions, I'm slowly working my way through upgrading and tricking out my various games. Slow and steady. But I do find myself struggling more between upgrading components versus just buying another new game. A lot of time, I'd rather just have something new to play. And I think that is a completely valid comment. I've mentioned before that when I do like a component video, I specifically don't discuss price because I think that's completely subjective. But I know like litco.net and some other places have these really nice upgrades for like Power Grid. This one that always jumps to mind as an example. You can get all these little houses and resources and really bling out your copy of Power Grid. And the upgrades to do that, all of the components in that upgrade pack, cost as much, if not more, than a brand new copy of Power Grid does itself. So you could pay the price for Power Grid, then you could pay the same price again just for the component upgrades. And inevitably, when I talk about a component upgrade, one of the first comments in the YouTube video that I get is someone commenting on, well, that's so expensive, that's as much as the game would be. Yeah, it's true. And, that might be a good thing, might be a bad thing. I don't think it's my place to say whether it is or not, but it is a factor. And it's a factor that, just like Michael says, can sometimes make you have to make a choice. Do I want to bling out this game? Because I could just go get another game for that same price. And it is interesting to me to see which games people decide to bling out and which games people decide to kind of leave as is and then go and just get a new game. So Michael, I can totally understand where you're coming from there. And I think it's a fascinating struggle in a way that we deal with as hobby board gamers. Let's go on to the next comment from Ethan, who says, I agree on price. An interesting example is Food Chain Magnate, which components-wise is nowhere near its price point. It's paper money and stuff like that. But it is a great quality game and worth the cost just for that. Food Chain Magnate has very, very minimalistic looking components. Of course, that was kind of done on purpose for the graphic design they wanted to go for. But it does have some custom cut meeples, wooden meeples throughout the game for the different resources that you use. But it's got, you're right, just the paper, everything else. Food Chain Magnate is a game that I'm waiting for someone to create a deluxe component upgrade version for. I would really like to see what people do with Food Chain Magnate. So I agree with you, Ethan. That is one that's actually been on my radar, waiting to see what becomes available, because it is ripe for that type of visual, impactful upgrade. If anyone out there has upgraded their copy of Food Chain Magnate, post some links to some pictures or something in the comments below, because I'd be really interested to see what people are doing with it. Referee Tom Green whistles in with, I think it's odd to look at a single game in isolation and ask if it should have better or cheaper components. If there were only one game with your favorite theme, then it might matter. So Tom, it sounds like you're taking more of a holistic type of approach, looking at sort of games in general, kind of maybe perhaps by a whole publisher or genre games, or maybe just the hobby in general there. That is interesting because I don't think I've ever taken that other holistic widescreen approach. I've always kind of honed in on one game at a time. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna kind of look everything in general and see if there's kind of a trend of certain components that could be upgraded or something, and maybe see if there is a certain component or type or something that is just ready for an improvement, and trying to figure out what that next big improvement could be. Because it does seem that the industry goes in these waves where one person kind of figures out an upgrade, and then everyone else starts doing that upgrade, and then it becomes the norm. So good comment there, and you've given me something to look into there, Tom. I appreciate that. And finally, we're going to wrap up with a comment from Dot, who says, there are times where fancy pieces actually make the game easier to understand and learn. Also, too flimsy of components can influence the replayability. You can't play with paper money when it's busted. That is absolutely true, that a component that wears out more quickly will definitely affect the replayability. I'm thinking especially of cards, that if they get bent or creased or kind of marked, then the game's replayability is ruined unless you sleeve the cards, which has led to a common component upgrade, card sleeves. So yeah, the fancy pieces of higher quality, if it is a game that you enjoy and you play often, I agree they can definitely increase the game's longevity, because those higher quality pieces, instead of just being a luxury item, upgrading your paper to plastic or something like that, actually will last longer and take more abuse as you're playing. So that is a good point there, Dot. I appreciate the comment. So if you're watching along at home, I hope that this has given you something to think about. And if while thinking you've created some thoughts that you want to share on this topic, feel free to post them in the comments below, or over on our Facebook and Twitter pages, where you can continue this and other conversations there as well. Until the next episode, I want to say that this episode that you're watching right now was made possible by the support of our financial backers on our Pod Pledge fundraiser. I want to thank everyone who's been participating in that. It's been really helpful and much appreciated. But until the next episode, I've been Chaz Marler, who, along with the YouTube live streaming chat, have been serving up some table scraps. Talk to you again soon. Wow, that's a tall window. That is too tall. Crazy window. Crazy window. Wow, I ruined the whole thing there, and I ended up calling you insane anyway. But don't worry, I'll edit that out. Gazencha asks, or says, does something with text on the chat here. People come to me every day and they say, hey, can you just film yourself doing screenshots, the whole video? I say, well, those are something I like to do, but I'm not sure. And then they walk away. Then we turn as they're walking and we smile at each other, and we know that there's still hope.